Okay, so this afternoon I wanted to reiterate the health and travel related entry requirements that comes into vogue as at October 31st of this year. So, ladies and gentlemen, on October 1st, the Honorable Prime Minister would have announced that our borders will reopen on October 31st to international travelers, tourists, and we will continue accepting our locals or nationals or returning nationals. Now, our aim is to reopen our borders safely with minimal or minimum risk of reintroduction of the virus to the Federation. And so we want to reassure you that appropriate protocols are being developed to ensure the safety of our people and the safety of the inbound traveler or tourists. And so phase 1 begins on October 31st. And so in phase 1, all inbound travelers to the Federation will be asked to log on to our national website when the website will be launched in short order. And so persons will be able to log on and complete the entry form, providing the specific details like your passport, ID page, travel date and travel details. And we are also asking that you upload a negative COVID-19 PCR test. Now, this test should be done within 3 days of travel. Now, we've attended some regional meetings, and we have been assured that persons within the United States of America, they now can access PCR tests and results within a more timely manner. And a number of our returning nationals, they have been successful in getting this test done within the 3 days of travel. Now, all inbound travelers to the Federation will fall into 2 categories. The first category will involve those travelers coming from within the Caribbean bubble with minimal risk of exposure to the COVID-19 virus. And so this includes persons coming from 8 Caribbean islands, including Anguilla, Antigua, Barbuda, Montserrat, Dominica, Grenada, St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and Barbados. So those are the 8 Caribbean territories. So individuals coming from these islands, you will be deemed as having minimal risk of exposure to the virus, and so that's the first category. The second category will be those coming from outside of the Caribbean bubble, and so you will be considered having a more significant risk of exposure to the virus. So what happens to you if you are coming from the Caribbean bubble? And so these are the 8 territories listed on the screen. Now, once you traveled directly to the Federation from any or from either of these 8 territories, right, where you resided for at least 21 days, right, and once you would have submitted a negative PCR test, once you land at RLB International or Vance Amory Airport, you will be screened. And screening here means you will be asked questions regarding the onset of COVID-like symptoms, and your temperature will be taken. And so once you're asymptomatic, once you do not have any symptoms, once your temperature is normal, you will be allowed to integrate into our society. Now, persons in this category, you will also be asked to upload the National COVID-19 mobile application on your phone. And so we can monitor you for the first 14 days while on the island, if your vacation, is for that duration. And so again, once you are without symptoms and you're coming from the Caribbean bubble, you can integrate freely into the Federation. One very important point: if you're an inbound traveler from one of the 8 islands included in the Caribbean bubble, you can stay at a private home, private residence, or you have the option of staying at one of the non-franchise hotel properties. So you can stay at Timothy Beach, Sugar Bay Club, Nevis Golden Rock, Paradise Beach Hotel, Mount Pellier, Plantation, Nisbet Plantation, Hermitage, Mount Nevis Hotel, and the Pinnis Beach Hotel. And so you have a wide array of hotel properties open to you if you're coming into the Federation from the Caribbean bubble. Please note that all arriving passengers from within the Caribbean bubble who have been in transit in a country outside the bubble, you will be considered part in the second category, whereby you will have to vacation in place for 14 days, or for the duration of your stay. Okay, so now let's look at the second category of inbound traveler. So if you are an international traveler, tourist, or a returning national from any country outside of the 8 Caribbean islands previously mentioned. So in other words, if you are coming from Jamaica, if you are coming from Trinidad and Tobago, if you are coming from the United States of America, if you are coming from the United Kingdom, if you are coming from further afield, Canada, or any of the European countries, or the Eastern countries, you will find yourself in this second category. So there will be several COVID-19 approved accommodation options open to you. All right? So if you're a returning national, you can stay at the Ocean Terrace Inn, you can stay at the Royal St. Kitts Hotel, you can stay at Oahu Beach Hotel, or even Portworx in Nevis. You can also, if you already have a villa in St. Kitts, or if you already have a home in St. Kitts, your home can be assessed and and once it meets the requirements of this pre-approved or pre-certified confinement site, and once you are willing to pay for the security facility, your villa or your home can be a site where you can vacation in place. Yes? And thirdly, if you are an inbound traveler, an international traveler, a tourist, you can stay at one of the franchise or branded hotels in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. So these are the options open to you if you're an international traveler coming from outside of the 8 previously mentioned Caribbean islands. The inbound traveler in this category is asked to submit a negative PCR test done within 3 days of boarding the flight to the Federation. Please note that this test must be done at an accredited laboratory. And again, this test must be the PCR COVID-19 test, not the antigen rapid test and not the antibody test. We are expecting you to submit a negative PCR test. The traveler will be screened at the airport when landing, upon arrival, you will be asked to upload the St. Kitts and Nevis COVID-19 mobile application on your phone, because we'll be monitoring you for the first 14 days of your vacation in place. So when you arrive at the Robert Llewellyn Bradshaw International Airport, as I said before, you will be screened in our newly recommissioned health station at the RLB International Airport. And so when you arrive at the health counter, you will be asked a series of questions to ensure that you are not experiencing any of the COVID-19 related symptoms. Your temperature will be taken. So once you're without symptoms and you've completed all that I've just said, you will be granted permission to enter the Federation, and you will be allowed to vacation in place at your hotel. with access to an approved package of services in a secure bubble for the first 14 days or for the duration of your stay if it's shorter than 14 days. The international traveler, tourists, will be required to do serial testing, meaning serial COVID-19 tests. And so if your stay is longer than 7 days, you will be tested on day 7. And if your stay is longer than 14 days, you will be tested on day 14. So tourists who receive a negative PCR test on day 7, if they're still vacationing in place, you will be allowed through the hotel's tour desk and by appointment only access to selective excursions in a secure bubble, and you can also have access to selective tourist attraction sites on the island in a secure bubble. So in other words, you'll be allowed to move from the franchise hotel in a secure bubble on an excursion that's approved, or you will be allowed from the franchise hotel to a selective tourist attraction site in a secure bubble, and then you go back to the hotel. All inbound travelers must receive a PCR test on day 14 if your vacation exceeds that period. So if your PCR test is negative on day 14, then guess what? You'll be free to integrate into our society. If your trip or vacation is less than 14 days, you can easily depart the island with an exit test if that's required. Now, tourists, international tourists, travelers in this category, please note that you can only use COVID-19 certified taxis or ground transportation with appropriate partitions in place to move between the airport and the franchise hotel, and to move between the hotel and the excursion or the tourist attraction sites. So now that explains phase 1, and we are getting a number of questions as to how long, what's the duration of phase 1? Well, everything about COVID is unpredictable, but we are estimating maybe 1 month or 2 months duration in terms of phase 1. Again, it depends on, if we have a surge in cases, it depends on a number of factors. But for now, we are estimating probably 1 to 2 months as a ballpark duration for phase 1. Phase 2, or the second phase, will involve an expanded list of hotels. And so such hotels would be required to submit the appropriate protocols to ensure safe operations and minimal risk of COVID-19 outbreak on the hotel properties. The second phase will also involve an expanded list of excursions and local tourist attraction sites. Again, the operators and the owners will be required to submit appropriate protocols, the relevant protocols.